So hi to everybody. Just as a way of introduction, it's going to be quite a short introduction tonight because we have quite a lot to cover, and I don't want to keep everybody longer than what the allotted time is. The goal of tonight's class is to try and explore the Haggadah as a tool for personal growth. I just want to map out for you what we're going to do. The class is split out into 4 sections. The first section, I'm going to give you a map of the Haggadah. I'm sure everybody here has been to a Pesach Seder before, but it took me about 30 years until I actually once sat down and looked at a map to see how the Haggadah flows. And there's a meaning, there's a depth into that. So that's going to be the first stage. Then I'm going to speak about a few concepts which I think is true for life everywhere. And then I'm going to discuss how we can illustrate these concepts specifically into the Haggadah, and I'm going to apply them. And I'm hoping that at the end of that, we'll see how the Haggadah can be used as a tool. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I think maybe if the time was the same everywhere in the world right now, there'd probably be about 50 of these classes everywhere. In Australia, South Africa, America, Canada, everywhere where there's Jews, we're a week before Seder night. So everybody's going to be dealing with, on some level or another, Pesach, the Haggadah. What I think is going to be different with what I'm going to try and do tonight is that most of the classes will be called insights into the Haggadah. Now, while I'm hoping that we will get to a level of insight, many times you have fractured little ideas of all very, very powerful, some would say even cool stuff that's all over the show. Something here on the 4 sons, something here on the matzah, something over here on the afikomen. But there's nothing really that ties it all together, which if you think about it is quite strange. Okay, there has to be something that's one thing, one line that's pushing everything through. So I'm going to attempt to do that tonight. It's not my idea. It's actually coming from the Gemara, from the Talmud. But I think this is it's a very important, if not the most important part of what's happening through the Haggadah. I want to start off with a personal story of what's going on. I think the only ones that who've met my daughter could maybe understand this. My eldest daughter is 4 years old, 4.5. She just began school in London. Now, as you can hear, I have quite a strong South African accent. Yeah, and my wife's South African as well. She also has a South African accent. So the kids in the house, they can't already talk or have South African accents. Now, when you're a South African listening to your little South African speak, it's just normal. When you're an adult and you're listening to the little South African kids speak in England, it's cute. But when you're another kid in a school and you hear a new kid speaking with a South African accent, it's strange. And in the last couple of weeks, we've been honest that our daughter's been going through something. She's been coming home and she's been having tantrums. It's been difficult. Something's going on, and I don't think I can say she's been bullied. But there are a lot of kids that are making her feel different, and she's told us, my wife and I separately, they say I'm different, and she's working very hard on changing her accent, and it's happening very, very quick. So here I am as a father, and I'm watching my child going through pain, and it's quite a difficult thing, and I want to take action, I want to do something, but I'm also a person that has always naturally, on some level or another, had a certain inkling towards spirituality and a need to pray, even though I didn't understand it as praying my whole life. So here I am, this is my question I'm posing to you, and I hope at the end of the class we'll have it clear, but I think it's a very thought-provoking question. What do I, as a parent, pray for my child? Anyway. Okay, is everyone here the question? What does any parent really pray for their child that's going through a pain, that's going through a difficult time, a difficulty? What do you pray for? Okay. So I see a few faces that weren't here last week. You did not have to have been in last week's. Please come in. Hi, how you doing? No problem. Okay, great. How you doing?
Very good.
Great. We just began. I'll just pose the question to the class again, the people who just arrived. The question is, what does a parent whose child is going through a difficult time in its life, what should he be praying for? If he sees his child in pain, and obviously he's going to feel that pain himself, what should the prayer of the parent be? Okay? And I went off to say that I see now it's probably about half the people in the class were not here last week. You didn't have to be here last week to get what I'm going to talk about now. But if I'm just going to summarize in one sentence what the class was about, so everybody will just have somewhat of an inkling what we spoke about. And it basically goes like this. Since we understand in Judaism that time is not linear, rather our Jewish calendar works like a spiral, okay? Therefore we can understand how in every Yom Tov, every holiday, the spiritual energy of that holiday comes back into the universe and for us to tap into. And since the time of Pesach is a time for, let's say, renewal or breaking free of that which constrains us, keeps us back from reaching our spirituality, our potential, therefore that ability to tap into Pesach is always there, because there's always something holding us back on some level. So every year there's another exodus that we can tap into, that we can go through. So with that in mind, let's begin. I'm going to hand out over here, please everyone take one and pass it around, a map or a flow chart of the Haggadah.
Was that a rhetorical question then about child and parent?
Well, it wasn't rhetorical. I'm hoping that at the end, as I said a couple of times, that at the end of the class we'll be able to answer that question. I don't think it's such an easy question to answer. I mean, you're a parent. Can you answer the question? I mean, don't if you can, but can you?
I think. Well, I've got an answer. I've always got an answer.
Yeah, it's true. You do always have an answer, Joseph.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great.
Doesn't mean I'm right.
Okay, so.
I attempt an idea.
Pardon?
I attempt an idea. We'll get
I think I want to just sort of let everybody sit on that for a bit. You know, I think there would be, everyone's going to have some level of an answer because we feel this idea. But let's see if throughout the class it develops. And I'll tell you what, you'll be first. Okay? Okay, is that okay? All right, fine. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we're going to come back to it. But this is the flow chart of the Haggadah. Firstly, there's two questions if we want to understand on a deeper level we must ask. One is, what is the significance that there are steps? And the second one is, why are there 15 steps in particular? So the fact that there's steps is basically shows that there's an order. The way you say order in Hebrew is Seder, and it's not for naught we call this, the Pesach Seder. The message is very simple, but it's quite profound. Growth is a process. Growth is something which happens through order. I think the easiest way we can see this is the idea of making money. There are three ways a person can become rich. He can earn it himself and make a lot of money. He can inherit it, or he can win the lottery. Now, I think everybody knows or has heard of stories that when somebody inherits a whole lot of money, it's more common that after a period of time that money has been diminished quite quickly. It's very rare that somebody takes that and builds that more. And with the lottery, it's even more extreme. There's been lots of studies written about people, first of all, either committing suicide or going into a Great Depression within a year of winning millions of pounds or dollars, or I would say rands, but it's not worth that much. Okay. And the other one is that we also see that, more often than not, that they actually regret it to a certain degree. They don't reach this level of happiness that they thought the money was going to come. Now, the first case of somebody who actually earned it and made his own money, he's a self-made millionaire, those people usually have a level of stability and they actually manage to continue, I would say, both growing the money if you're looking at it from that point of view and also growing as a person. Growth is a process. If it needs to be real and stable, we need a process. There's a step process, and so too in spiritual growth. Maybe even more so in spiritual growth. There's no shortcuts. There's no quick fixes. Why 15 steps? There's a lot of reasons given here. I don't want to belabor it, and I don't want to go into the Kabbalistic meanings. But on a most basic level, there were 15 steps in the temple that led from what we call the public domain into what they call the courtyard where the actual temple service took place. The reason why I think this is important for what we're discussing tonight is that a person had to take those steps in order to do his service, to get his sacrifice or whatever it was to the priest or to the Kohen, that it could be done. You couldn't do the service unless you walked the steps. Now what we're going to do on Pesach night is a service. You have to walk those steps. And the last one is that, it's the last one that I'm going to mention, is that the easiest way to say 15 in Hebrew letters is to use the letter Yud, which is a 10, and a Hey, which is 5, which spells one of God's name, which basically is the name representing divine grace. The only reason I want to mention this is that if we're going to use the Haggadah as a tool for personal growth, you can't do that alone. Okay, so everyone to his own level of understanding what that means, but you do need divine grace to actually achieve it. Okay, so let's actually go through the flow chart. The first stage is Kadesh. That's when we make Kiddush. That basically every Yom Tov or Shabbos starts with us sanctifying the day, separating between the mundane days before and now the holy day that's just become. And we also do it at the end. We now separate between the holy day that's just been into the mundane that we're going to. After that, Urachatz, we wash the hands. We don't make a blessing. This is a remnant of the washing of the hands that was done in the temple times. We'll explain a little bit later why we do this. Stage 3, Karpas. That's when we dip a vegetable into salt water. After that, Yachatz, the breaking of the matzah into two, and the hiding of one of the pieces. After that, Magid. Magid is the telling over the story. That's probably one of the main. It is the only one that really is a Torah a Torah mitzvah that we say on the night. The telling over the Exodus. It's probably the longest one. All these other ones can be done pretty quickly. The Magid can take a little bit longer. After the Magid, we move into Rokza, the washing the hands. This time we say a blessing. After that, we say the Motzi, the blessing of the matzah. It's its own separate stage. After that, we come to the eating of the matzah, then the maro, the eating of the bitter herbs, the koirech, which is the wrapping of the bitter herbs inside a matzah, what we call the Hillel sandwich. After that, we have shulchan orech, probably the best part for everybody, the eating of the meal. And, every family has their own traditions. And after that, it comes to tzafun, the eating of the afikomen. Then Baruch, grace after meals, Hallel, the songs of praise that we say to Hashem as part of the Pesach Seder. It's very interesting. This is one of the only times that we say the biggest Hallel that we say the whole year, which is the full Hallel with all the different parts, plus we add on a few extras. And we say it specifically on Seder night, and we say it at night as well, which is also quite interesting. Last stage, Nirza. Nirza is basically translated as finding favor. And that is the last stage. It's the completion of the Seder and finding favor. So that's a very basic outline of what we're going to do. My suggestion is, as we move forward now into the next stage, keep, you'll need in about 10 minutes or so, keep it with you, and then as I'm going through the stages again, we'll come back to it. I just want to say that even reading it out now, it sounds pretty long. Yeah? Just looking at a map, it doesn't have to be that long. For those of you who are going to have some control in the Seder, there are parts which you can sort of speed up, and not everything has to be read, but you should consult a competent rabbi about how to work that out. But it doesn't have to be that long. The really only long one is the Magid. Okay, so let's begin. I want to mention let's just make it three axioms of spiritual truth. Three ideas which I think is true everywhere for all people. These are universal ideas. The reason I'm putting them into the class now is I think they're going to be building blocks to the picture I'd like to paint for you. Okay? The first one is as follows. There is a concept that sometimes in order to rise up, you must first go down. You see this most clearly perhaps in sports or in dancing or in little kids when you tell them to jump. They bend their knees. We all bend our knees first before we jump up. Okay? So spiritually, too, there's a time that sometimes we've got to go down before we can go up. We need that, that bounce almost.
Spring.
That spring. That's a nice way to say it. Okay, good. The second one is as follows, is that God often puts the cure in place before he gives the disease. It's already there. The process of healing is usually one of, let's call it, discovery as opposed to one of invention. If you speak to people and if you look into your own life, you'll see that the cure that you, so to speak, found was one which was always there, was right underneath your nose. It wasn't one that had to be invented or brought from the outside. That's most of the time for these type of things. And the third one is that only in the darkness do you really appreciate the light. Now it sounds a little bit strange, maybe a little bit, morose in a way, but if you think about it, if I would have to just take a match or a candle and light it up now, it wouldn't do that much. But if we switched all the lights off, it would create quite a powerful ambience. The candle would have more power. So if the point often, or the point is that you want the ambience, you want the light of the candle, you need to have the darkness there. Okay? Everybody with me? Any arguments? Everybody agrees? Okay, great. So let's now try and go and understand the one main theme that I think is the most important part of the Haggadah. There is a Mishnah in the Talmud that says that when a person is given over the Haggadah, the person leading the Haggadah, it discusses where he should begin and where he should end in the telling of the story. Okay, it doesn't say what he says in between. It says where he begins and where he ends. And what it says is, and I'll tell you in Hebrew and I'll explain it. It says, Maschil b'gnus, Mesayim b'shevach. He should begin in disgrace and end in glory. Again, begin in disgrace, end in glory. Well, it's quite an interesting idea. Is it clear? Okay, well, let me try to explain it clearer for you, Steve. Okay. There's an argument, there's a halachic dispute really inside the Gemara of what that means. There's two opinions. One says it means that we should start telling the story from when our forefathers were idol worshippers, and you should continue in the story all the way until we became, Avdei Hashem, servants of Hashem, the highest accolade that you could come to. The other side of the argument is no, you start saying from the time we were slaves to Pharaoh, and you tell until the part that we were redeemed and became free men. The ending points and beginning points are different, but the theme is the same. There's a beginning which is very, very low, very degraded, and the ending is in glory. That, I believe, is the theme that the whole Seder follows through. And that, I believe, is the most important theme for personal growth. Let me try and illustrate this to you. Can we do an exercise? Is everybody open-minded? I'm getting a few nods. Some people are just sort of looking at me. Julian says no, so I'm going to go for it. Okay. But, oh, you're not open-minded? Okay. Let's try something here. Okay. I know that I probably shouldn't mention this, being a rabbi, but everybody, if you can close your eyes if you want. If you don't, you don't have to. Try and think for a moment. I'm going to give everybody a few seconds of the most powerful, let's say, feel-good or motivating movie you've ever seen, in your life. And if you can't get the most powerful, just get one of the top three. Okay? Does everybody have a movie? I just want to go around the room quickly and just get a quick. I'm just going to run my hand like a Mexican wave. Just shout out the name of the movie, okay? Huh? You couldn't think of one? Okay.
Rocky.
Okay, great. I'm with you.
Don't have one yet.
No? Okay.
Sorry, no. Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness. Okay.
Fit.
Okay. I haven't seen it.
Feel good when it's there. Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Shawshank Redemption.
Great.
Ultimate Gift.
I don't know that one. Sorry.
It's Wonderful Life.
Oh, very nice. Very, very nice.
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List.
Paying it forward.
Very good.
Dead Poet Society.
Actually,
Wow.
I'm changing one.
Oh yeah?
Coach Adams.
Oh, Patch Adams. Okay, very good. Steve, you remembered one? Okay, so I'm in a tough call. I don't know which one, so I'll just tell you all three. But I'm sort of with you. It's either one of the 5 Rockies, okay, all 5 of them, or Bloodsport, Okay, did anyone see Bloodsport?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Okay, Kickboxer follows the same idea, or Karate Kid. As you can see, I was quite, as a child, if anyone understands Skop, Skit and Donna. Hey?
Most Sylvester Stallone movies generally.
Well, here's my premise. Almost every single script in Hollywood is going to follow one of two directions. It's either going to take you from darkness to light, or it's going to take you from light to darkness. The light to darkness ones are something that we see, I think it's more in our day and age, probably from about the 80s, 90s, where you had these films, like Titanic, where he actually dies, and he doesn't come out the water, he actually dies. So we got into that because everybody got sick and tired of the happy ending because no one really saw it in their life. But really, every movie is going to follow one of these two themes. Now, the ones that make us really touch us, that move us the most, are the ones where it's from the darkness into the light. Where the hero or the heroine of the film they are stuck in a bad place. It's either through other people, or there's a villain, or there's an unexpressed love. There's evil parents, or who knows. There's something holding them down.
All the Bollywood films are like that.
Oh yeah, or the Bollywood. I think every story on a certain level has got that. It has to have it. It has to have that. And it's the tension, okay? And it's that tension between that darkness, that being tight, to the sudden turnaround, the switch into the light that touches, that moves us all. Now...
No, but you also get a lot of those where people die at the end.
Yes.
Which is sort of a...
that's the one I said. That's the light to dark.
Yeah.
That's our generation.
It touches a lot.
Also touches a lot of us. It's a little bit morbid in a way, but it gets us. You see, it's interesting. I know there's one or two films that I walked out and I felt a shift in me. I felt something in me had changed because of the film. Now, it's very rare today. It's very commercialized. Hollywood is an industry, and it's not really there for the message in as much as it's there for the money. But there are good films out there, and they do move us. And it's that idea that I want to sort of play on, that idea that I want to work with you with. So as we're moving forward, take your film with you, or your hero with you as it went through the film. And for those of you who want to take it a little bit deeper, take your own personal mitzrayim, whatever it is that's blocking you, and sort of keep that in your pocket as well. And as we're going through the ideas, let's see how the Haggadah will bring those out or resonate. Okay? So fine. Everybody's with me so far? Oh, fantastic. Jules, I'm going to probably need another one. Please, thank you. Okay, so stage 3, okay? It's actually stage 4. We'll start with a question, okay? Out of the 613 Torah mitzvahs, there is only one. Hi. There is only one mitzvah that specifically has to be done at night. There are mitzvahs that should also be done at night, okay, or also have the application at night, but there is only one, well, it's really two together, that they get done specifically, that the actual mitzvah doraisa, the Torah mitzvah part of it, is fulfilled at night. And those are the mitzvahs of the Pesach Seder. And we actually discussed this in the Haggadah a little bit. We see part of the discussion that one says, I didn't know that we should say it at night, and the other one says, oh no, we do, and we just it's quite abstract the way they discuss, but that's their discussion. Can it be done at night? Should it be done at night? And we paskin, we rule that it must be done at night. So the question is why? What's the significance of being done specifically at night? Okay, so do you have one of these sheets? Oh, you got one? Okay, great. So we're gonna start accessing the sheet now and try and see if we can bring these ideas that we're working with alive into the Seder. So the first one is Kadesh. Kadesh is the root of the word is kadosh or kiddush or holiness. As I said, there is a halachic need to make kiddush first, but there's a deeper reason as well. You see, the process of making kiddush is actually mentioning or separating, as we've mentioned, between the holy and the mundane. Most commentators explain that when the Torah says that we are created B'Tselem Elokim, or in the image of God, that doesn't mean that, just like we have hands and we're like people, so God's an old man and he's sitting on a cloud somewhere with 5 toes and 5 fingers on each hand and foot. That's not what it means. What it means is that just like God can distinguish and separate and make real decisions, we as human beings are the only creature in the world can do that. So when we make Kiddush and we separate between holy and unholy, darkness and light, okay, Shabbos and not Shabbos, or Yom Tov and the week, we're in a way accessing a very, very deep spiritual part of ourselves, which is the goal of the Seder. The problem is that most people, to a certain degree, don't always feel in touch with their holiness or their spirituality. A lot of people, if you ask them, they might even feel that they don't belong at the Seder table, that they're not holy enough or worthy enough actually for what it's supposed to be. So therefore it's much easier just to leave it on the level of see the friends and family and eat the good food. But if you look carefully on the night when we make Kiddush and you see the last line of Kiddush that we say over there, you see the blessing says that thank you, let's make it say like this. Thank you, God, the infinite creator of this universe, who sanctifies all Israel and this holy day. In other words, we have an internal, let's call it intrinsic part of us which is holy. It's intrinsic to us. We didn't really do anything to do that. You can block it, you can hide it out, you can make mistakes, but you're never ever going to get that holiness out of you. It's always going to be there. And that's the part you're really trying to access. And that's why the first step is really getting in touch with that, because that's where you're going for. That's what your goal of the Seder is. Okay? Stage number 2 is Ruchatz, the washing of the hands without a blessing. Now, this stage, as we mentioned, is an exact parallel to what was done in the temple by the Kohanim in the times of the sacrifices. Now, we're not Kohanim, most of us, and we are no sacrifices, but there's something that's similar. That washing of the hands over there was not to take off the dirt. Okay? It was to raise the level of holiness, of spirituality of what they were about to do. They were about to do something which was part of the service, which was to eat the sacrificial meat, or the sacrifice. It could have been also a mincha, a flour offering, and they needed to wash their hands first. They had to raise that level of spirituality, and that's what we're alluding to here. That same idea, because the whole goal is the raising of the spirituality again, right? Because if we can raise the spirituality and see clearly what that is for us, it's much easier to see where we need to get to.
So I can understand the washing.
Yeah.
That sort of, I don't know, it just feels spiritual when you do it. You're like cleansing. With the Kiddush, then how does that bring the spirituality out, you say? I know it's the thing we separate between, but
Right.
Doesn't seem to me so much.
Okay, so I'll try to explain it to you again, Robin. I'll just quickly, in one sentence. There's two parts to it. The first part is the understanding that your ability to make something separate and to make a decision between something is an accessing of your soul. In Judaism, we understand the soul, for want of a better description, is a part, however that works, of God. That means there's a part of you which is intrinsically holy. As a reminder of that, the end of the blessing that you say on the night says the words, I'll say more simply, thank you God, Master of the universe, for blessing all Israel and sanctifying them. Sanctify means to make holy. So the blessing itself that you say is a reminder that you are intrinsically holy. Okay? It's an awakening really. It's, when we speak about reminders on this level, it's really like an awakening. I'll just sort of take a sidestep here and say, I'm sure there are people who will say to you that, and it's true, that the process of the Haggadah working on Seder night is you can't really understand it, and you sort of do these things, and it affects your soul, and then it all just sort of happens. And it's true. There are very, very deep things that are happening here, but that's not what we personally. I mean, I'm not 40 yet, so I haven't studied Kabbalah yet, but that's not the levels that I think we can access that are going to be relevant for us right now. And it's true, they are happening, and if you know they're happening, they're probably more likely to happen because you're aware of it. But what we're trying to discuss over here is this. I guess you could say there's three concepts happening, Marvin. Okay, the first concept is Talmud Mevi L'dei Maaseh. A deeper understanding of something is what causes the change in you. I'm sure you know in your own life, or let's just take people who are like heavy smokers, or people who do anything else which is holding them back. I mean, I remember somebody mentioned last week something about nibbling cake late at night. Okay, so people who are being held back in that way, they know it's the wrong thing, okay, but they haven't had a deeper understanding of that yet. They haven't had a greater perspective change, which allows that to be translated into action. The other level is that we also say that chutz ma'oire pnim, the external world, the actions that we do will awaken within us, in our soul, something to happen, a change. It can cause a shift. Now, the two ideas are not contradictory. They sort of work in tandem together. It's that while greater or deeper understanding helps you shift and helps you change, sometimes the best way to get to the greater understanding of the perspective change is the action. Both these things are happening on the Seder. Okay, we are seeing things or awakening, reminding ourselves of things that we know to happen to get a greater perspective, and at the same time we're also doing actions which are also helping us, giving us greater understanding. These two things together will take us to the idea of V'yadata hayom v'hashovesa el ovavecha, and you shall know today. Okay, this is a pasuk that comes from Dvarim that we say at the end of Aleinu. You shall know today, and you will cause to settle on both your hearts what you know. That's an explanation of how the process of knowledge, of integrated knowledge, will work. We all know it to be true up here, on some level or another. No one really is going to get surprised of what it is that's holding them back. What we don't really know is we're not conscious of it all the whole way, and we don't always see the way to get out of it. The process of integration of knowledge is the causing to sit, as the verb says, or the settling down on all parts of you, both your heart, so to speak, both that which accepts and both that what resists the wisdom to happen. So when we're going through the Seder, there's a lot of this reminding or waking up of the messages that are already there. And we're looking for the chords to be struck in us. That's why I mentioned the movies, because those movies, in a very surface level way, strike those chords in us. Okay? Thank you. Everybody's good with that? Thanks, Aaron. Okay, good. So let's go on to Carapas now. A lot of people will speak about on a Seder how the number 15 happens a lot and how the number 4 happens a lot. So there's another thing that happens a lot in numbers. It's the number 2. You see the duality of a theme running through the Seder, which again I think is connected to that main stream that we spoke about. And you see this clearly with the Karpas. In the Karpas, we take a vegetable and we eat it as an appetizer before we've eaten the main meal, okay? And we also dip it. These are two signs which are the signs of somebody who is wealthy, somebody who is royal, who is free, that he's got enough food that he can just take small bits and dip. That's not something that a poor man that's looking after every morsel will do. Yet, on the other hand, okay, we don't lean when we eat it, and we dip it in salt water, which is a reminder of the bitterness of slavery. So here you have in the same action, so to speak, the same mitzvah, two things, slavery and freedom, all rolled into one. So they teach a very important lesson, which I think is integral for us to reach in our own freedom. Wherever you get to in life, you can't forget where you came from. If you're connected to your roots and you remember where you came from, that's always going to keep you level, because you know what caused you to get, or what helped mold you to where you are. Okay, and I think, especially if you've got into a place of glory, so to speak, it keeps you humble. It keeps you like really knowing how you got there. That keeps things very stable and very, very real. And that's the lesson that's happening through this karpas. Now there's a slightly more deeper one, a spiritual one, which is that if you think about it on these terms, if you could get into the mind of a vegetable, if there is such a thing as a vegetable, you'd be amazed what it's going to think. There is a... Okay, I've got to preface this. I just want to tell you that in my family, when we used to have karpas, I don't know why, okay, but on one side of the family, we used to have a boiled egg dipped in water. Does anyone else do that? Okay, so what I'm going to say now shouldn't get you worried or scared. I'm just going to tell you about one of the mainstream lines of halacha is that it needs to be a raw vegetable. Okay, and there's a whole fight in the halacha about why does it have to be raw, and can't it be raw that's now cooked? And the side that we go with, okay, at least in the mainstream, let's say strict halacha, is that it needs to be a raw vegetable that tastes as good as it does raw, if not better than it would be when it's cooked. The reason is that we have to have a blessing on this vegetable that will be borei pri ha'adama, okay, who creates the fruit of the earth. We need to remind ourselves, we've got to tap into the fact that this vegetable came from the earth. Why? Because if we could get in the mind of this vegetable would be stunned, it would be shocked. It had been taken from the lowest place that a vegetable could ever be, even though it's its natural place. I mean, the earth is quite a low place. And it finds itself, in a place of glory, the highest accolade that a vegetable could ever get. It's on a Seder table. It's been used in the mitzvah by a Jew on the mitzvah of Pesach. I don't know what exactly the vegetable would think, but that's quite a long process. If you see again, starting in a very low place and coming to a place of glory. It's following the same idea, and that's a reminder for us that it doesn't matter where we are, really, in our problem or what's holding back or where our hero is in the movie. There is a place that he can reach to, a place of glory. Okay. The next stage is yachatz. Yachatz is the breaking of the matzah into two parts. Again, we're going to see here this dual theme. The dual theme is true. It's true in matzah in general. Matzah can be one of two things. Matzah is either the bread of our affliction, the bread of our slavery. As we actually say, once we break the matzah, so the leader will take the smallest part and he'll say, when we start the process of the magid, which we'll discuss now, he holds up the matzah and he says, Halach man anya. This is the bread of our affliction. That's how the whole section of magid starts. And he goes on to describe it. Yet on the other hand, it's also the bread of freedom. It's the bread that we ate once we were free people. So you see again in the same object, the same idea that there's two ways, there's two things. There's a degraded lower side of things, and there's a much higher, more glorified side of things. And where we take the same thing and we illustrate this point by breaking the matzah into two, and we take the biggest part and we hide it. So let me just sort of put it out there to everybody. If we're going to say that the biggest part is the part we'll use for the afikomen, which is the part which is connected, because we don't have a temple now, to the Pesach offering, that is the part that represents for us the freedom. What's the significance of hiding that away? Any ideas on that? Okay, that's pretty good. I like that, Mike. Any ideas?
It's right at the end of the Seder. You've got to go through the stories to reach the end.
Okay, yeah, that's good as well, Abby. That's great. I think that it's a very, very powerful idea, and it's very, very important, for us when we go in through our process of leaving Mitzrayim. When we put that so to speak, the glory part of the matzah away, you don't see it anymore. But you know that it's there. You know it's there. Even though you're watching the movie and you might not know, it might be one of the movies that end bad, that like Marvin was talking about, but most of the time you sort of know he's going to get out of it, but you still experience the process through it. So one of the most helpful things that anybody that's going through a difficult time, that's going through a pain, can hear, or that needs to hear is,
This too shall pass.
pardon?
This too shall pass.
Yeah. This too shall pass, but the better side of that is really, you're going to get to a better place.
Light at the end.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, every cloud has its silver lining. There's many ways to say this, but that knowledge gives you a lot of you need trust to do that, first of all, but it gives you a lot of serenity. There's a lot of power in knowing that you're going to reach that point. That's what's happening over here when we hide in that piece of the afikomen. Next stage is magid. I know it's going to sound quite funny because this is really where the whole discussion begins. This is where we have the mention of the argument and the process of going from let's say degradation up into glory, and we have the two sides, and our Haggadah deals with both. We do speak about the times that our forefathers our ancestors were idol worshippers, and we also speak about how we were slaves in Egypt and how we came out of both of those darknesses. And there's even a prayer that we say. It's amazing. It says, we went from darkness to a great light. We went from, pardon?
Is it mit
I think that's a little bit earlier than the part that I'm missing. I think this is connected to the part just before when we go into Hallel. And that just before that part over there, we mentioned that we went from anguish to joy. We went from mourning to festivity. Is the same message which is being passed through to us, that the process we are looking at on the night of Pesach, what the Haggadah is taking us through, is this process again of darkness into light, and that is something that we're trying to tap into in our own lives. And the point over here is that we're trying to appreciate the events that molded us into who we are today. Now, if you could imagine, I don't know, we shouldn't know of such troubles, but if we can imagine somebody who was once, let's say, a substance abuser, a drug addict, some type of other addict, whether it's gambling or something else, once he's come out of his process, for him to look back on that process, you'd think might scare him a bit, but most of them look at it in a very, very powerful way, because it helps him realize of where he came from and what molded him, what process he had to get through to get him where he is. Now, it doesn't matter where in the world you go, and it doesn't matter what type of anonymous you go to, they all follow a very, very similar process. They sit in a room similar to this, in a circle like this, and everybody sort of shares the process that they went through. Now, I don't think this is going to work if you've got kids, and I don't think it's going to work if you have people who are not into this type of thing, but for sure, if you have like-minded people, part of the process, the discussing of the Yetziat Mitzrayim, can be, and for some people I do know in Jerusalem this is what they do. They sit around the table and they when they finish the whole thing, and they talk about something that they had gone through, and they describe to everybody there, and they share their process of going through that difficult time and coming out of it. And it's very powerful, and it touches something in us. It gives us that clarity about ourselves in our own lives, sort of where to see. It gives us a perspective. And if we work on it, it can be a motivation to take us through to actually doing what we need to do to get out of it.
It doesn't happen to everyone. It does happen to some people, for sure. That they come through something difficult and it's positive, but then others, not everyone though. Some people don't come through that. And I know, obviously, you say it will give us like serenity.
Yeah.
We believe in that, and maybe we can... It depends what we're looking at. If we're looking at maybe the world to come or something, but not everything in this world does end in that sort of upbeat place.
So I just want to say, such a good question. I want to say it out for the people who are watching online. Okay, Marvin's saying that not every story ends, with such great glory, and so maybe what I'm saying is not true. So I'll say it like this, Marvin. It's true, not everybody is going to come out, the champion. Not everybody is going to come out of his struggle, like Rocky did, and like hold the proverbial belt up, so to speak.
Apollo Creed did lose.
That's true. Okay, that's true. He did. Okay, it's true. Is it heat on by any chance?
No.
Oh no. Okay.
I'll tell you.
So Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think that everybody, almost everybody in the world, on some level or another, has come through onto the other side on some level. Does that mean he came out, totally complete or into the highest level of glory he could have? No, not necessarily. But the Exodus was that type of process, and many people have had that level of let's call it turnabout in their lives in one area. And I don't think everybody has it on every year, but it's the understanding, it's that it's being touched by that sort of opens up to the possibility that it can happen in ourselves. And if we don't see the possibility in ourselves, in our own lives, it's not going to happen. If you can't see that in yourself, there's no ways it could happen. They tell that old joke about the guy when the one, Marvin, when it was started flooding and the guy was like on the roof and somebody came past and he said, and he like on a horse, he said, come on, he said, no, don't worry, it's going to stop, and he didn't get on, and somebody came past on a boat, he said, jump in, he said, no, don't worry, it's going to be fine, the waters are going to go down. You follow what I'm saying? And finally, like a helicopter comes, he doesn't get on, and then he dies, and he goes up to heaven, and God says, what's going on? And he says, well, what's going on? Why don't you save me? And he said, like, I tried to. I gave you the opportunities. But if you don't see it yourself, if you don't see the boat coming past, that's the idea. Those are the parts that we're trying to awaken in ourselves. So, just in way of keeping the theme going through, the parts which are a little bit more difficult to explain, I'm going to skip over. I'm going to do Pesach on, if anyone understands what I'm saying. So, Rochza, this is the washing the hands with the blessing. This is, again, this is just connected to the idea that if we wash our hands, we say a blessing, we're showing that we're taking time to contemplate what we're going to do before we just rush into the physicality. The idea is that anyone who's concerned with his physical and spirituality will be as concerned everywhere else in his life, and he should be. Then we come to motzi. We come to the blessing on the matzah and on the bread. Yeah, it's a smaller one. I wasn't even sure if I'd say it. The smaller ones I'm going to warn you. I'll say them quickly and we'll go forward. And anyone who wants to ask Prophet, I'll tell him. I just want to get to there's three more main ones I need to tell you about in order for the whole picture to come clear. So I don't want to hold anybody back. Okay? So we'll come to, let's deal with motzi. There is one big glaring problem, difficulty in the blessing that we make when we say hamotzi. Does anybody know what it is? Can anybody tell me what it is? Okay. Yeah. Well, bread and matzah are very similar, which we'll come to in the next stage. But the question is, there's a problem in the words that you say that doesn't make any logical sense. I'll translate the words.
It says like from the ground.
Pardon?
Like the bread from the ground.
Meaning what? Very good.
That like maybe we get it from like the wheat or whatever like the ingredients from the ground.
Yeah.
But not necessarily.
Great. So Natalie's saying the question, and I'm going to just say it out for everybody online that can hear as well. The problem is the blessing says that, again, I'll just sort of roughly translate, blessed are you, O Master of the universe, who has brought forth bread from, the land. Now, maybe Kabbalistically in Garden of Eden, however they work, there were trees with like loaves of bread on. Well, we don't see them today. And the way we make bread is that God gives us wheat, per se, because it's a bit hard. I mean, we are very involved in that process as well. And then we make flour, and then we make dough, and then we bake the dough into bread. So why are we saying God brings forth bread from the land? He doesn't. At best, we do it together. So what's the idea over here? Does everybody hear the question? Very, very profound answer. God gives us two gifts. He gives us A, the raw materials, and B, the tools and the ability to create something with that. Now, all we have to do is take one logical, step down from talking about bread and talk about human beings. God gives us, the human being, the raw materials. He gives us a soul with all its beauty, all its power, all its amazing, midas that make us who we are, and our special purpose in this world. And He puts it in a body with all the challenges that body has. Those are the raw materials. And then he gives us the tools and the ability to learn how to make that into something more. How to take it from something which is, let's say, not everybody is born or has such a hard struggle, but everybody could reach a higher place. Everyone has a potential which is more. And it's the same type of line that we're speaking about over here. There's one of the greatest lines I ever heard is that it's not the cards you dealt, but it's how you play them. So those of you who have played cards before, it is the idea that we're talking about, and that is the message that we're coming out from this bracha. It's up to us. We've got to play what we've been given, and we've got to take that process and cause the turnabout. Okay? Right, matzah. So Abby, you brought this up right now, a few minutes ago. Matzah and bread are quite similar. In fact, they're very, very similar. They're both made from flour and water. They're both kneaded into dough, and they're both baked, and you have the outcome. Except there's one difference between them. Does anybody know what it is? Oh, sorry. One of the stereo. Say it again.
The time in the oven that it's
Great. What, they're the same?
Yeah, one's leavened, one's unleavened.
Okay, great.
Rising.
Very good. And what the difference, what makes that is the time. It's 18 minutes, okay? So there's two messages here. The first message is that, time... Well, I'll tell it to you like this. The way you spell the word matzot, which is many matzahs, and mitzvot, which are many mitzvahs, is exactly the same. It's just the vowels that are different. So the rabbis teach us a powerful idea over here. Just like you can't let the dough become matzah, you can't lose the moment. You need to seize the moment when it comes to living life. We say that by seize the moment, don't lose your mitzvahs, but don't lose life. Don't let it slip by you and become chometz. You've got to seize the moment. And this is sort of reiterated in the amount of time that we say that it will take for dough left alone to become chometz, to become leavened. Guess how many minutes? 18. Okay? 18 is the way we spell that with letters, with the letter achet and a yud, which is chai, which means life. Okay? So that's the lesson that's going over. There's a deeper one, which is slightly, not slightly, is very connected to the theme we're speaking about. And that the Gemara is replete with many stories of people who had reached the lowest levels of degradation, and in one moment they stripped everything around. They had one moment where their perspective changed to such a level that they actually either broke down into tears, and they had come to such a high level of regret. They did such tshuva that when they passed away at that moment, they were immediately accepted into the highest places in heaven, even though they'd lived the life up until then of what we shouldn't even discuss it now. And the message over there, we actually say that it's called, each Gemara says the same line. He says, it's koine oilamo b'shah achas, right? He acquires his world in one moment. That is a very deep message for us to understand that at any moment we can put into action through our decisions that change, that turnabout in our own life. That's coming through the matzah. How are we doing? Has everybody got any questions? Okay, so let's move along to try to get through to the end here. We come up next, the next stage after matzah is the maror. Okay, the maror are the bitter herbs. So there's a discussion in the halacha of what bitter herbs we can use. We today use two. It's either we use what we call horseradish or romaine lettuce. I guess the rule is the same, and they bring it down in the halacha that it has to begin sweet and end bitter. If you're going to do the mitzvah of maror, it must be something where you start to eat it, it's very, very sweet, and then becomes bitter. Now there's two levels here. The first level is that's how any slavery begins. That's how the slavery in Egypt began. We were on a point where things were very good for us. It was sweet, and then all of a sudden we were slaves. And that, I think, if you speak to any addict, regardless of what he's addicted to, that's how it begins. Sweet, and then all of a sudden it's bitter. And that's true even for people who are not real addicts, but it's just a defense mechanism. Yeah, it starts off working. It actually starts off sweet. When you become, let's say someone's an introvert, he becomes an introvert because being shy and being a wallflower is easier than, the risk of being rejected. So it works at first. You don't get rejected, but then you sort of get locked into that. just to show you this idea in a very base way, let's say somebody takes a self-defense course, and he gets pretty good at it. That's his defense mechanism. So one day on the way to the car, someone tries to mug him, and he looks after himself. He doesn't get mugged, and the guy runs away. So that's good. That's when it works. That's when it's sweet. But if he now goes home, and his grandmother comes to give him a hug, and he does his self-defense, that's in the wrong time, in the wrong place. That's bitter now. Okay, and we do that in our lives. We have these things that work for us in some situations, or worked once even, but we've now taken them on, and this is what we're trying to get out of. So this is what the Maro is saying.
So shouldn't it go from bitter to sweet instead of sweet to bitter?
What do you mean?
He says it should start off sweet and then become bitter. Shouldn't it be the opposite?
I'll make your question even better, okay? So first of all, thank you, but that's perfect what I needed right here, perfect. The order here is wrong. If we're saying that there's an order to the Haggadah, and it's 15 steps, and you've got to take the steps in order, and you've got to crawl before you walk, and walk before you run, so wouldn't it have made more sense then, that if we're talking about the maror, which is the bitterness of slavery, and we also talked about the step before, the matzah, which is like, so to speak, the freedom now, we should have had the maror before the freedom. We should have had the slavery before the freedom in the chronological order. Why are these two things swapped around? You're right, it should be bitter to sweet, because that's what the line that I'm suggesting of the whole thing is, right? Maschil b'kenus, okay, and Messiah, you end in glory. So now everyone should concentrate now. If you haven't concentrated up until now, this is when you're going to concentrate. This is the whole class, okay? Okay, you ready, Julian? This is for you, okay? It's a very, very, very powerful idea, okay? Who took us out of Egypt? Right? Huh? Yeah, everyone agrees on that, right? Pardon?
Which is why we thanking him. Don't put me in and don't put me out.
Okay, I just have to say it louder. So what's your name?
Hannah.
Chana said it like this. And he put us in there. We've seen, some of us who were here last week, we saw the prophecy. God told us they are going to go down. I'm going to put them into slavery and I'm going to take them out. When the source, okay, are you following this? When the source of your slavery, of your darkness is the same as your light, you see that they're all one. And then the order doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter which one came first. Because what you start to understand, when you see that it's all one, that slavery is really the seed for freedom. Exile is really the seed for redemption. Your darkness is the necessity. It's the seed that you need for your light. You couldn't go free. You couldn't become who you're going to become unless you had that darkness first. So now we're sort of tapping in now that there's actually two themes going on in the Exodus and in the Seder. Okay, and if you look more carefully, you'll see that's happening. It's happening at the matzah. It's happening with the karpas. We see it in the yachad. There's two processes. There is a process of sweetness to bitter and bitter to sweet, and it's all one. It's all one. Thank you very much. That was great. Good question. Okay, so then this gets represented again. I'll just speed it up now a little bit. I don't want to hold people over, but I'm happy to take questions at the end for those who want to stay. We get to the koirech. The koirech is the wrapping of the matzah together. We don't really wrap it because the matzah we have sort of breaks, but we make a hillel sandwich. Okay, korech means to wrap. We make a hillel sandwich, which is the matzah, which again is the freedom, because now we're for sure at a level of freedom with the matzah, and the bitter herbs, which is the bitterness of slavery. We put it together and we eat that. What we're trying to show over here is our commitment. You see, we use charoset. Charoset is that the delicious stuff that everybody eats because they're so hungry already by that stage, but it's a mixture of nuts and apples and honey and wine, and it's sort of supposed to remind us of the mortar that we use together to build the bricks for the pyramids. And we want to put into ourselves to understand that we need to glue the broken parts of the matzah back together. We want to understand there are two parts. There's a darkness, there's a light. There's a difficulty and there's an ease, so to speak. There's a lowliness and there's a highness, but they're all one. They're all one. Our low part of us and our high part, it's all us. this is the commitment to understanding that and to gluing those parts together. And there's a level of understanding that just as much as God was with us in the redemption when He took us out, He was also with us in the slavery. It's a very important thing, and I think it sort of resonates again of what we in a place of darkness, or anybody in a place of darkness, would need to hear from somebody who's trying to help us. You're not alone. You're not alone. Okay, then we eat the meal. I'm not going to discuss that now. We're running out of time, and then we come up to the tzafun. Tzafun in Hebrew means hidden, and that's a very interesting thing. Because it depends which, what your traditions in your family. Either the kid brings the matzah to the father, or the father finds the matzah that the kid found. And now we say, here's the big piece of matzah we hid. Here's the afikomen. We reveal the afikomen. Yet the name of the section of this Haggadah is called hidden. So either someone made a mistake, or the halacha got messed up, or there's a very deep message here. Okay, now I'm going to go the one that there's a very deep message over here. The message is that even though we'll get to a stage in our life, hopefully, that we'll understand why we had to go through the pain that we had to go through in order to get us where we are, even though it's revealed, there's still a level which is hidden, which is mysterious, which is not totally there, because we can't see it all until the real end. But on the other hand, like we've seen before, even when it's hidden, it's also there. There's a beautiful duality there. That again, even when it's hidden, you know that it's there. You can lean on that. You can relax with that. You can trust that. But even when it's revealed, there's also something that you can trust. You can know that there's something really powerful. There's something really that you can't know everything about, and that gives you a lot of trust and a lot of faithfulness. Then after that we bless God. So we say grace after meals. We bench. Then we have Hallel. I'm not going to touch into these because I'm very aware of the time, and I want to stop exactly in an hour, and I've got about 2 minutes left. Okay. So the last stage that we need to discuss is the nirza. Nirza means finding favor. It's the level of completion. This is a stage that when we sing the song Ashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, the next year we should reach Yerushalayim. Now that's a very nice idea, but for the last 6 years I lived in Yerushalayim. 7 years I lived in Yerushalayim, and when I did Pesach in Yerushalayim, I sang the song. A little bit funny, right? There's a level here that there's a deeper, more, let's call it, concept of Yerushalayim that we need to connect to over here. Yerushalayim, the word, is a contraction of two words. Yerushalayim, okay? Fear or awe is a better word, and the word shalem, which means wholeness or completeness or peace. Now, peace is not what the media would have you believe, which is, let's say, an absence of conflict. Peace, in reality, is the harmonious and total coexistence of mutually opposite and conflicting parts. Yet they live together. They can live together. The one's not trying to change the other and make him like him or make her like him or whatever it is. There's a peace. Everyone's accepting what the other one is, and they live together. Okay. Now we don't have the time to go into this, but it's a very powerful idea, and you actually see this in one of the plagues, that the hail was fire inside a ball of ice, and the ice didn't melt the fire. Sorry, it didn't put the fire out, and the fire didn't melt the ice. It was. They were actually like balls of peace, so to speak, and it's extremely powerful. And that's the level we want to get up to now. We want to come to a level of shleimus, of wholeness, of peace within ourselves, of understanding the different parts of us, the battle, let's say the darkness and the light, the part which is the gnus, which is the low part, and the glory, and understanding that process of the bitterness to the sweet is actually all one. That's how we reach the completion, and that's how we reach the favor. So in conclusion, I just want to summarize a little bit of how we had the journey that we took. We understood that all movies on some level have to follow one or two scripts, either darkness to light or light to darkness. We've discovered that inside of the Haggadah, one of these scripts, the script of the Haggadah is actually the dual process of both. It's what happened in the Exodus and what happens in our life, and anybody who's going to go and grow into spiritual growth. There will be a sweetness to bitterness, and then a bitterness to sweetness that we need to go through. We also saw that because of that, it comes out that slavery is the seed of your freedom. It's the difficulties and the darkness that you have to go through which produce the freedom and the, let's say, the glory that you need to get to. Rocky did not get to be winning the thing because he just sort of laid back. I mean, was it Rocky 4 when he fought Drago? Like, he was putting a cart through the snow. You remember that? Like, you have to go through an intense stage of actual growth. And that can be painful. On a certain level, it has to be. The motto, if you want to say, that I try to memorize and works for me is that when you're in the moment, you have to accept the darkness, but you've got to yearn for the light. Okay? Accept the darkness as being part of what you need, coming from the same source of the light, yet trust the light, yearn for the light, and know that it's going to come there. Okay? I think we can now answer our two questions pretty easy. First question is, why dafka specifically must the mitzvah be done at night? The way we would say it is like this, is that once you understand that it's all one, that darkness and light are both coming from the same source, it doesn't really make a difference where it is. The actual complete day, a whole day, must include the night. So we specifically do it in the night to touch into that idea. The other question I'll put you with is what should a parent pray for? So, I said to you, I'm going to ask you first. So what were you going to say?
I was going to say that they should be able to use it, to be able to take it for the challenge that it is and make the most of it.
Yeah, that's what we're going to say? Unbelievable, great. That's what it is. It's Chana, right? What Chana said, my daughter's name is Chana, by the way. Okay, what Chana said, okay, Chana Leah, ready? Yeah. So, what Chana said, for those of you who didn't hear, is that to pray that the difficulty will go, the darkness will go, these kids will leave the school and go somewhere else is not going to be the best thing for my daughter. She's going to grow. It's my job as a parent to help her and pray that she will understand what she needs to understand. She will learn the lessons. She will be molded into a higher, more glorified part of herself and get through this difficult stage. And I've got to teach her how to do that, both now and for the future as an independent person. That's the prayer. So I want to end off on one small, let's call it anecdotal story. I can't tell you that it's true, but it's a powerful way just to put this all into a little box and a little package that we can go home with. They say over a story of a little boy who was given caterpillars by his father as a pet. And he put them in the box and he used to watch them every day and change the leaves and watch them eat. And he loved these little caterpillars. And one day one of them disappeared. And he was distraught. So he called his dad, and his dad came and he showed him. He said, move the leaves and look over there. And what was there? A cocoon. The butterfly had spun a cocoon around himself, which the boy didn't see. And he said, now watch. And the boy watched, and he waited, and he waited. And a few days later, out came the most beautiful, colorful butterfly the boy had ever seen. And he was amazed at this. And as the days went on, the other 3 butterflies in the box did the same thing. They all spun themselves into cocoon. And as the days went after that, another butterfly came out, and then another butterfly. And there was just one little cocoon that was still full with a caterpillar or whatever it was inside, waiting to come out. And the boy waited and waited, and he started to get a bit worried. So basically he had an idea. He said, I'm going to help the butterfly. So he went and he got his scissors and he cut a little hole in the cocoon. And sure enough, he watched that the butterfly started to crawl out of the cocoon. And it came out, but it didn't look like the other butterflies. Its wings were like all funny and wrinkled and didn't quite come out and looked a little bit funny, was limping. And basically within a couple of hours the butterfly was dead. Now the kid was really sad. He was really, really sad about this. So he went to his dad and he said, Dad, like, what happened? What's wrong with this butterfly? Why did it die? And so the father came, he had a look, he saw the cocoon. He said, did you cut the hole in the cocoon? And he said, I did. He said, why? He said, I wanted to help him. I wanted to help him get out of it. Like, he wasn't getting out. It was supposed to be horrible in there and painful in there. He said, well, let me explain to you the way a butterfly works. When he squeezes himself out of that little hole of the cocoon, the process of going through that small tight hole squeezes all the liquids in his fat body out into the wings and out into his legs. That's what gives him his life. That's what helps him transform into a butterfly. When you made it easier for him, the liquid couldn't go into his wings. He was never going to fly. He was never going to make it. So he died. I think the lesson of that story is exactly what we're talking about. Our Mitzrayim, our constraints, that which squeezes us, are by design. They're perfectly designed for our growth. And it's our going through them in the right way which will produce, so to speak, the beautiful butterfly that we can be in potential. Okay? So I hope to produce within the next couple of weeks, with the help of Darren, some type of a card or a sheet or something for people to print out at home that they can have with them at the Seder night with the Haggadah, so that people can look at and try tap into these ideas and hopefully awaken the points that we've discussed. Thank you for coming. And is there any questions?
I think it's a really nice presentation. The only thing I don't understand is this darkness and light. If it all comes from Hashem. That I understand 100%.
Yeah.
We know that from the Purim story. We can't see it from Mordechai, etc. But then you said, because it all comes from Hashem, you said it doesn't make any difference which order it comes in. But surely that was the whole point, that it does matter the order. I mean, otherwise you've got let's say the lottery winner, and suddenly, let's say, stereotype lottery winner, who then goes down.
Right.
Or even if we take the Purim story, so okay, we don't care. So who cares whether or not it ends positively or negatively?
No, I think you misunderstood me, Marvin.
Yeah,
you misunderstood. When I said it doesn't matter when the order comes in, I meant the order of the Haggadah. You see, you're right. In the actual real life, story of things, the order does matter. The order does matter. But by the sages, when they put the Haggadah together, and they want to teach you this lesson, okay, that it's all one. So what they're showing you, the way they can do that is by swapping the sweetness, the sweet matzah per se, and put it in front of the bitter slavery, to show you that that's all one. Okay, obviously, in life we do want to go from the darkness to the light. Marvin, I mean, I can say this to you because I think you have a bit of experience with this, but if you have a look in the first chapter of the Torah, in Bereshis, and you read through the creation, you'll see this idea right there in the first day of creation. Okay, so there's one phrase that follows through in every single day of creation. Do you know what that phrase is?
Everything was good. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then what comes after it? Great, thank you, Abby. Vayhi erev, vayhi boker, which means. Now, look, most of the world works that day starts in the morning. Yeah, sometime in the morning with the sunlight. It's only the Jewish world that works with the idea that it starts the other way around, that it's the night first. So already into creation was built this idea that there has to first start a darkness before a light. We all go, if you just think about how you understand something, we always start with a place of confusion, and then we move into a place of light. It has to be that way. It has to be. But the point of what I'm saying is, and what's running through, is that both the darkness and the light have the same source. Okay? You start in a low place and you end up in a place of glory. Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.